Don't you think your mom decided to make fun of us like that, standing in the rain? Alice asked her husband. The train arrived 20 minutes ago. My mother wouldn't allow herself such malicious jokes, Brian answered. The Taylors got a text from Brian's mother last night. I'm coming by train tomorrow morning. Amanda didn't like unnecessary words. This information instantly depressed Alice. Why is she coming? My husband was worried. What happened? She didn't even specify the number of the car. Brian tried to call his mother for a long time and to no avail. Regina looked at him with a sad smile. It's no use, Brian. You know she hates yelling at the whole car. Moreover, she knows that you will immediately try to call back. A fine rain was falling in the morning. In a hurry, of course, no one thought to grab an umbrella. The train came a long time ago. For 10 minutes, the Taylors rushed from car to car, looking out a familiar face in the noisy crowd. Gradually, people left the platform. The last porter rolled a cart loaded with colorful suitcases past, and the sodden spouses were still standing under the station clock, staring intently into the distance. Alice looked longingly at the bouquet of wildflowers that had turned into a miserable bush. Alice, I think it's her, Brian said loudly, pointing to a lady coming out of a distant carriage with a large package and a suitcase on wheels. Brian rushed to meet his mother, kissed her, and took the luggage. With each step of the approaching mother-in-law, Alice wanted more and more desperately to disappear into thin air. Hello, Amanda, you look great. Alice smiled affably and tried to slip her husband a bouquet unnoticed. Good morning, Alice, the mother-in-law said indifferently and continued the conversation with her son. In short, I have almost 2 months off, so I'm coming to you for a long time. Well, that's fine. You haven't been staying with us for a long time. Mom, this is for you. Brian handed the flowers to his mother. How lovely, Amanda sincerely rejoiced. It's nice that you remember my tastes. I've loved wildflowers since I was young. It's not me, Alice bought it. She remembers everything, boasted the son. Well, that's what I thought, the mother-in-law said casually, cheap, but beautiful. Amanda was in her own style. In the car, she immediately took out a glossy magazine from her bag. Brian asked solicitously, How did you get there, Mom? Did you sleep well? Watch the road. Amanda ordered and buried her face in the magazine. Alice silently turned to the window. The relationship with my mother-in-law did not work out from the first day of acquaintance. 7 years ago, Brian brought the bride to New York to introduce her to her mother. Amanda looked carefully at the embarrassed, thin girl with luxurious dark red hair. Alice, is this translated from Latin as the Queen? It's a beautiful name. That's what my mom called me. Alice readily supported the conversation. Yes, the future mother-in-law agreed. Unfortunately, parental love is blind. And I named my son Brian. Amanda lovingly patted her offended son on the back of the head and, immediately forgetting about Alice, sternly asked, What about Jessica? She's waiting for you. Mom, what are you saying? Brian easily waved off. Megan and I clung to the idea of marrying the children, and Jessica and I were not even asked for our opinion. Well, I'll see how you'll be clapping your guilty eyes in front of Jessica and her mother in an hour, Amanda laughed. Did you invite them to dinner? The son was indignant. Of course. And who, in your opinion, cooked so many delicious dishes while I was at school from morning to evening? Meg and Jessica. How could I not invite them? Brian has always had an impenetrable character, so Alice clapped her guilty eyes instead of him. Megan, noticing that Alice was clearly uncomfortable, whispered in her ear, Don't be nervous. Amanda doesn't give up without a fight. I have a fiancé. We filed an application to the registry office 2 weeks ago. When Ethan was born, Amanda flew to the children on the first weekend. She looked at the baby lying in the crib for a long time with tenderness, then said, Looks like little Brian. He was so nice back then. And the eyes are blue. Alice could not resist. Yes, they are blue for all babies. The mother-in-law was indignant. They will darken yet. Thank God, not red. Amanda adored her grandson. For 2 summers in a row, I took him to my place for a couple of weeks, passed fruit by buckets through a friend. But the mother-in-law still did not perceive the daughter-in-law as a member of the family. The poor thing was saved only by the distance between the 2 cities. 5-year-old Ethan was the only person in the family who was heartily glad to see his grandmother. He enthusiastically examined toys, bragged to his parents about branded sneakers. Amanda hadn't changed a bit during this visit. After a couple of days, Alice felt like an absolutely worthless creature. It turns out that she cleans the apartment badly, dresses badly, brings up her son incorrectly, cooks on average. The mother-in-law made remarks so skillfully that any answer would look rude and stupid. Amanda often proved by personal example that everything can be done much better. Staying alone on weekdays, Amanda did not sit idle. Alice wasn't a slob, but her apartment had never been so clean. The bed linen has never looked so dazzlingly white, as if the mother-in-law loaded it into some other magical washing machine. Amanda, thank you so much for your help. I have a lot of difficulties at work right now that I don't have time for anything. Alice thanked her from the bottom of her heart. Don't mention it. I can't calmly watch my grandson suffocate from the age-old dust, the mother-in-law scoffed. Possessing angelic patience, the daughter-in-law did not respond to bullying for a long time. But one day Alice snapped. One day at dinner, Amanda picked at Alice's signature cake with a spoon for a long time and, carefully tasting a tiny piece, said, "The sponge cake, of course, is not airy, the cream is a little greasy, but, in general, it is edible." That evening, Alice gave her husband a quiet tantrum in the bedroom. Then she couldn't stand it and returned to the kitchen, where her mother-in-law was playing solitaire. Alice said, "Amanda, if you don't like the way I feed your son and grandson, maybe you'll cook yourself? Do you want to put all the homework on me?" the mother-in-law asked calmly. "Well, why is that? I'll do the laundry, clean up, and you cook. Just switch roles." The daughter-in-law did not give up. "No problem," Amanda agreed. Already in bed, the husband sighed bitterly. "You shouldn't have invented all this, Alice. Now Ethan and I will go hungry." Her mother disappeared all day at school, never learned how to cook. "Nothing, you'll be patient for a couple of days." Alice tried to hide the triumph in her voice. Well, finally the mother-in-law fell into her own trap. The next day, after returning from work, Alice smelled the aroma from the kitchen in the hallway. Her husband and son were already sitting at the table set for dinner. There was a mother-in-law in a funny apron nearby. "Alice, we're just waiting for you. Wash your hands and sit down at the table." Sorry for the simplicity of the dish. I'm not a chef after all. Amanda spread her hands. The tenderest ready chops, somehow cooked potatoes in a special way. It seems to be an ordinary salad of fresh vegetables, but with such an exquisite, fragrant dressing. Everything looked so appetizing that Alice even envied. She looked reproachfully at her husband, who shrugged his shoulders with a confused look. "Mom, the food is delicious. When did you learn to cook like that?" Brian asked. "You know, Brian," his mother looked at him with a sad smile, "when you live alone, you will inevitably find yourself some kind of hobby so as not to die of longing. My son always adored Alice's pancakes, but did they really compare to a work of art from Amanda? Golden, plump circles with raisins and candied fruits, with vanilla sauce." Alice's own mouth watered. "Grandma, these are little sons." Ethan shouted enthusiastically, "Grandma, are you going to make them for me now? Hurrah!" The mother-in-law looked at her daughter-in-law with a smile. The victory was hers. "Okay, now I'm going to cook, but I have one condition, breakfast without me. I want to at least sleep it off on vacation." Of course, the benefits of the mother-in-law's stay in their house were palpable. Alice didn't have to constantly cook, in a hurry to drag Ethan to kindergarten. "My son used to have problems with reading. He knew all the letters by heart, but he was confused when putting them into words. Amanda taught her grandson to read very quickly. Alice still doesn't know what magic spell his grandmother whispered in his ear, but suddenly Ethan began to clean up after himself toys and neatly fold clothes on a small chair. Even the cat badger suddenly stopped tearing the wallpaper with his claws and walking past the toilet. Then it was Brian's turn. One day after dinner, my husband yawned, getting up from the table. "Thank you, Mom, for a delicious dinner. Did you go to your sofa?" my mother-in-law asked, sipping tea. "Don't you want to give your son some time? Or should I wash the dishes instead of Alice?" "Not today." Brian sighed heavily, very tired. "I'm actually working, Mom." Mother-in-law objected. "Really? I'll tell you a terrible secret. You're not the only working man in the whole wide world. Others somehow find time to take care of the child and help around the house. I was also at school from morning to night, but I devoted every free minute to you. Everyone." Amanda shook her index finger in front of her confused son's nose. "And you. I've been living here for the second week, but I haven't seen you wash your plate at least once, take out the trash, vacuum the carpet, play with the child." "Mom, calm down." Brian was offended. "Alice doesn't like it when I meddle in household chores." "Really?" The mother-in-law was amazed. "Alice, alas, turned into a slave a long time ago, and you didn't notice. If you don't help, then at least don't trash like your cat badger. Can dirty socks not be thrown around the house?" Your grandfather, my dad, has never in his life allowed his wife to wash his socks. I was shy. Can you imagine? Brian was silent. Then he laughed. Everyone, my beloved women, from tomorrow you will not see a single one of my socks. By the way, I'm going to throw out the garbage. When the two women were left alone in the kitchen, Amanda suddenly sighed. You make so many mistakes when you're young. I was afraid all the time that Brian wouldn't grow up to be a mama's boy. I wanted to become a real man. Overdid it, probably. It turned out to be a man who does not respect women's work at all. Yes, you are a feminist. Alice smiled. No, I'm a realist. Brian is a great guy. He has a lot of advantages. I love him madly, but I have to admit, he's not a gift. Amanda thought. You're both not gifts. You, too, are far from the model of an ideal wife. Alice was ready to communicate normally, even to be friends, but every time Amanda destroyed everything. That morning, Alice found out in the parking lot that she had forgotten her car keys. I called the editorial office to warn that I would be a little late. Well, you cannot come at all today, the boss graciously allowed. It's better to do an article in a calm atmosphere. Thank you. Alice was delighted. I'll get to work right away. She quietly entered the apartment so as not to wake her mother-in-law, but suddenly she heard some voices in the living room and froze. Listening, Alice realized that Amanda was talking on Skype with a friend. The daughter-in-law wanted to immediately indicate her presence, but when she heard the magic phrase, "I'll probably go home in 2 days," she froze with delight and hid in the hallway. No, Megan, I don't have the strength or the means to stay here anymore. You have no idea how much money I spent on these lunches and dinners in a week. I won't have a cent left soon. You will never guess in your life how much they charge for the simplest dishes in a restaurant. So you tell the children that you can't feed the whole family with your own money, advised a friend. Megan, how do I say? On Monday, Brian and Alice completely filled the refrigerator with groceries. Why would I spend money with such a bunch of products? Why did you, in general, my dear, start this stupid argument? I would live normally. I wouldn't quarrel with anyone. So you definitely need to show your pride. And in your opinion, I should have confessed to my son that I can't cook at the age of 50? Can't wait. I remembered that there is a restaurant nearby with wonderful homemade food. I was delighted. And now I can't imagine how to get out of this trap, complained the mother-in-law. The weekend is coming soon. I can't order food from the restaurant with the children. No, I'm going home from shame. Thank God Alice hadn't thought to look in the freezer once in a week. The products are all untouched. Alice's cheeks burned with indignation. She resolutely stepped into the living room. And teach your grandson that it's not good to lie, Amanda. And what about yourself? Alice watched her pale mother-in-law with pleasure. Were you eavesdropping? Exclaimed the mother-in-law. Alice shouted triumphantly, I was eavesdropping. And now I'm going to check the freezer. The daughter-in-law ran into the kitchen, Amanda following her. Alice opened the refrigerator. Indeed, all the products are whole. Why did you come up with this idiotic game? We will return the money to you. Don't worry, the young woman cried. Did you want to humiliate me so much? What for? What have I done to you? Why did you hate me so much from the first day? I've never been rude to you. I've never turned either Brian or Ethan against you. Why? Yes, because people like you destroy everything around. My mother-in-law suddenly said, You are taking away the most precious, the most beloved. Who are you talking about? Alice asked in amazement. About red-haired bitches like you. One stole my husband, Brian's father. The other is a son. When I saw you then, I almost lost the power of speech. 1 and 1, like that scoundrel. Even the hair is exactly the same red. I wondered if you were her daughter. Thank God. No. Are you serious? Alice couldn't believe her ears. Have you been taking revenge on me for your sufferings for 7 years? He was the only man I loved. Amanda screamed. Well, what do I have to do with it? Alice shouted back. Amanda turned around and walked briskly to her room. Alice hurried after her. For a few minutes, she watched her mother-in-law throw clothes and cosmetics into the suitcase and then continued. Mom, where are you going? Are you leaving? You won't even say goodbye to your son and grandson? Won't you tell them what happened? Where are you going, Mom? Alice was screaming. She was ashamed to listen to herself, but she couldn't stop. This love story of yours is already old. You have a grandson already, and you can't forget everything? You've been bullying me for 7 years because of such nonsense, and now you're running away? He was the only man I ever loved, Amanda repeated softly. Tears were streaming down her face. Alice immediately quieted down. Why are you crying? You started it yourself, Amanda. Alice felt sorry for her mother-in-law. For the first time, she saw in her mother-in-law not an iron lady, but an ordinary woman who needs love and protection. Let's talk calmly. Well, where are you going? Ethan will be upset, and so will Brian. I've always liked you, too. I was sincerely ready to be friends, to love. Amanda silently zipped up her suitcase and took a step towards the exit. Alice got in the way and took the suitcase. Amanda, well, excuse me. Let's talk humanly for once. Let go, Alice. The mother-in-law snatched the suitcase back. Yes, give it to me. The daughter-in-law grabbed the suitcase again, threw it on the floor, and kicked it with such force that it flew away like a feather and crashed into the bedside table. The beautiful statuette shattered. The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, breathing heavily, stared at the fragments. And both women suddenly started laughing. They sat on the bed for a long time. They laughed, cried, apologized, hugged, asked for forgiveness. An hour later, Amanda wiped her reddened eyes with a handkerchief. Ethan asked me to make pancakes today. What about now? I can't do it. It's okay. There is a lot of time until the evening. I will teach you. Alice smiled. How do you like this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Subscribe to the channel. I love you.